Now, more than a month since the city abruptly closed the bridge to the Long Island shelter, another rally was held today in Boston, with dozens of people calling for swift action from officials. As the temperatures get colder, those calls for action are growing louder. WGBH News reporter Ann Mostu has more.
Let's get these men, women, and children off the streets, back into treatment.
From City Hall Plaza to the State House, about 100 homeless people and their advocates rallied today, demanding that the city come up with a plan to deal with those forced from Long Island onto the streets.
And when those miracles are hard to find, faced with hard times, screaming up to heaven, please show me a sign.
A woman who introduced herself as Heather told the crowd that the services she received at Long Island helped keep her sober.
2 weeks after the island closed, I went to my day group. I filled up my schedule with groups and meetings because I wasn't working anymore because the island's closed. And I went to group one day and I broke down and I said, I need help. And I said, I feel like I'm going to relapse. I lost my whole routine, my foundation for my recovery.
Heather is now staying with her parents in Quincy, but wants to return to Long Island if just to get her belongings.
All my clothes, like all my hygiene projects, like my photos of my daughter, like my planner book, my big book, my pillow, my blanket.
The city has opened a temporary shelter in the South End Fitness Center, but has yet to announce a long-term plan to either reopen or replace the shelter on Long Island. Ann Mostu, WGBH News.
The organizer of today's rally doesn't consider herself a political activist, as much as a concerned mother. Linnell Cox's son stayed at the Long Island shelter and is now living on Boston Common. Linnell, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So this is really a very personal issue for you. Can
Yes.
you tell us about how you got involved?
I got involved because on October 8th, the decision was made to close down the Long Island Bridge. That closed down 11 or so programs out on Moon Island, and that displaced the most vulnerable men, women, and children living in the state of Massachusetts.
Now, much of the focus has been on the homelessness issue, but I know you and I were talking about the need to understand that there's a dual diagnosis. These people are not just homeless, but in many cases they're also addicted, and they need immediate help for that.
That's right. So homelessness and addiction are very much intertwined. And like I said, on the island, there was the large shelter, and then there were 11 or so programs. Some of them housed children as well as addicts and folks that are getting into transition coming out of incarceration. So
Now tell us about your son and his situation right now.
So my son is in a relapse, and I actually haven't heard from him in a couple of weeks. So
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And I know one thing we talked about earlier, that the bridge closure meant that 56% of treatment beds are no longer available. So if your son were to seek help right now, instead of a 2 or 3 day wait, he may have a 2 to 3 week wait.
That's right.
And what would that mean? So
it's actually 56% of the beds in Boston. So not throughout the state.
Okay.
So what that is, what a 2 to 3 week wait is for a heroin addict, is a death sentence. And that means when you're an addict and you want to go into treatment and you have that moment that you feel of clarity and you want to be clean and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you call and you hear no, you can't, not till tomorrow, call back. They can't wait. It's an immediate thing that needs to happen. And if it doesn't, then you lose that opportunity of recovery. And they just slip it back into the system and continue to use.
Now, Felix Arroyo, the city's chief of Health and Human Services, has promised that the Walsh administration would replace the bridge and reopen the shelter and drug rehab services on Long Island. Do you blame the city for not having a backup plan to understand what was at risk here?
So, of course. I mean, you think about it, if you have an island with 700 people on it, there has to be some sort of evacuation plan for the city itself that is in the care and custody and control of that island. They must have to have an evacuation plan. But then the programs themselves needed to have an evacuation plan and to be able to execute it. But what it is you have people in treatment, in live treatment, people in detox that are not medically cleared yet, that are taking medications, and so do I blame them? I think that not enough has been done. I think that from that very day that that decision was made, that there should have been a plan for these people. They're men, women, and children. They don't have a place to go. There are not other detox beds out there. We know this. We know that Massachusetts falls severely short on our treatment beds and shelters. In March of 2014, the governor, Governor Patrick, he declared a public health safety emergency due to the epidemic of opiate use and overdose. That was in March 2014. At that time, he appropriated $20 million to go into the system to help with that. And that money is there, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I looked at the bill online, but I'm sure that some of it could be used. And I just feel like if the city and the state could have gotten together and made a plan, I feel like if those people were tax-paying and citizens and voting, then things would have happened a lot differently. And that's very sad to say. People don't want to believe that, you know, but that's what I feel.
Lynelle Cox, thank you for sharing your story and for all you're doing.
Thank you.